de motion, notices of motions, notices of inquiries, préavis d'interpellation, dépôt de pétition, tabling of petitions, question period, période de questions. Senator Plett.
Thank you, Speaker. Senator Gold, in April, when Minister Freeland announced a deal to provide Air Canada with almost $6 billion in repayable loans, the minister said dividends and share buybacks would be restricted and executive compensation would be capped. On Monday, we learned that while Air Canada was negotiating with the Trudeau government to receive billions in taxpayers' dollars, they were in fact paying their top executives $10 million in COVID-19 pandemic mitigation bonuses. Leader, how could Minister Freeland ever negotiate an agreement like this? How could the Trudeau government say it capped compensation at $1 million, but allow Air Canada executives to collect bonuses of $2 to $3 million each for having laid off, Leader, for having laid off most of their employees? How does this make any sense?
Senator Gold.
Well, thank you for the question. The negotiations and the agreement that was ultimately entered into between the Government of Canada and Air Canada contained very clear rules regarding executive compensation, limits on it. The agreement that was negotiated also included limitations on stock options. Those limitations remain in effect or are effective until 12 months after the loans have been repaid. And there was also in that agreement, as this chamber would recall, a commitment by Air Canada to maintain April 1st employment levels. The intent of this agreement and these negotiations were to provide Air Canada with the necessary liquidity to keep Canadians and Canadian marketplaces connected. The news that before this agreement was actually signed, and its terms, therefore, legally in effect, Air Canada paid the bonuses, is one that is deeply, deeply disappointing to the Canadian government. And it is a view of the Canadian government that Air Canada's actions abuse the spirit of the government support.
Senator Plett.
What about the role of the government?
Somewhere in there, in that answer, you talked about it had been very clear what they were doing. Obviously, it wasn't as clear to some people as to others. Air Canada laid off well over 20,000 of its workers while giving its executives millions in bonuses. And the Trudeau government, you say they're troubled. The fact is that the Prime Minister and the Finance Minister didn't seem all that troubled at their news conference. I think taxpayers will take a different view, Leader, about whether this is fine. The package brought forward in April helped just one airline, while thousands of other workers in the aviation sector remain out of their jobs. Why wasn't the Trudeau government capable of negotiating a comprehensive plan to help the workers, all the workers in this industry?
Question.
Senator Gold.
Well, Senator, thank you for your question. To the first part of your question, the government is deeply disappointed in the actions of Air Canada. It is not pleased, far from it. And to the second part of your question, each sector has unique challenges. Each company or sector within an industry has different challenges. The Canadian government worked with a number of airlines to help them in their particular challenges. I'll mention just one that's from my home province, and that's Air Transat. In April 29, 2021, Transat reached a bailout deal with the government, which had, amongst other features, the requirement that Transat refund its eligible customers who found themselves with tickets but no place to go. And so it remains the position of this government that the efforts that it did in a time of crisis were made not only with the best of intentions to help Canadians and those industries struck by the pandemic, but in fact, despite the news of Air Canada's decisions to compensate their CEOs, which is against the spirit of the agreement that they ultimately did sign with the government, that nonetheless the support of this government was to the benefit of Canadians and their need to stay connected through air.